Listen, everyone's got their favorite sandwich, roll, or wrap, from the humble bologna and cheese to your ultimate greasy burger. There's just something about a mix of tasty ingredients between some carbs. But of course, like many things in the culinary world, sometimes certain versions are just superior. And today our bright red, googly-eyed friend is going to show you exactly why that's the case. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode here at Time Out Kitchen, where today we're going to be taking our aggressively mediocre cooking skills to Canada's Maritimes and trying our hand at an incredibly delicious and satisfying lobster roll. Now, to build what is arguably a top tier sandwich or roll, you're only going to need a few ingredients, and naturally we've got to start with our lobsters. Now, I've got two 2 to 3 pound lobsters, which should yield about 4 or 5 fully loaded lobster rolls, and these freshly caught lobsters from PEI, and that's Prince Edward Island for you non-Canadians, are, as you can clearly tell by their beautiful red color, already steamed for us, which is going to be a great way to save time and be a little bit easier for anyone who's a little uncomfortable handling these crustaceans. Okay, bread. So listen, for bread, I'm not going to say you can't use a normal hot dog bun, but I'm also not going to say that you've got yourself a real deal, proper big boy lobster roll if you don't find yourself this kind of bread right here. Now, this is a cross between a brioche and a hot dog bun that, once toasted, has the absolute perfect texture to go with our lobster. So leave those hot dog buns on the side. Alright, so that covers bread, and now we're going to need a bright acidic note to cut through the richness of the lobster roll. So to that end, you'll want to grab yourself 1 lemon, which we'll cut in half and use the juice and zest from. Next, you want to grab some herbs for a bit of freshness. In this case, I'm using a mix of parsley, basil, and green onion, but you can use any of these depending on your tastes. Then go ahead and grab yourself a stalk of celery, and please, for the love of all things good in this world, please make sure it's crisp and not flaccid. Bendy celery is just no. Anyways, flaccidity aside, for a creamy element, we're going to add some mayo. Now, some versions of lobster rolls don't use mayo, but lots of butter. Now, I personally like a little bit of mayo here, and so that's what I'm going with. But of course, you can use whatever you like. And there you go, that's every ingredient you're going to need for this handheld marvel. It's pretty simple, right? So with the ingredients covered, guys, it's time to get to the prep, but before that, B-roll. Okay, enough drooling, it's time to prep our ingredients. So to start, grab your herbs and roll those up and give them a fine dice. You don't want any long stringy bits here. Next, grab your green onion, cut it in half, and then slice down the length of the stalk. Then just slice thinly so it matches the rest of our herbs. It looks something a little bit like this. So go ahead and move that to the side and grab your celery. You'll want to cut this the same way as you did your green onion. You want a small dice here so we have an even distribution of nice, crunchy, and not flaccid celery. With that done, let's talk about the bread. Now, this bun has a couple of features. One is that it requires some manual labor to get these open, so go ahead and slice the bun from the top. Yes, the top, not the side, because we'd like to be allowed back in this part of the country in the future. Anyways, the second feature is that these buns have the perfect side to take on a thin layer of butter, and a thin layer is all you're going to need as these are already quite buttery. So do that in the least messy way possible, and we're off to our next ingredient, which is going to be our lemon, and it's time to zest. Now, I stupidly cut this in half before zesting, which I advise against because 1, it looks ridiculous, but secondly, and more importantly, because the likelihood of slicing yourself on your grater is increased by 430%. Trust me, I did the math. Oh, also, if you want to avoid chopping up zest like I had to, I suggest finding a microplane, but I'm in cottage country and resources are limited. But that aside, you should have lemon zest that looks a little something like this. Now grab yourself a bowl, toss the zest inside before grabbing your mayo. Here I'm adding about a half a cup of mayo, but don't worry if you add too much or too little. You don't really need to use it all, and it's always easy to add a little bit more. Next, go ahead and squeeze in that lemon juice, making sure not to drop in any of those pesky seeds before grabbing these suspiciously ancient looking salt and pepper shakers and seasoning to taste. Then give this a good mix, and once thoroughly combined, it's time to add our herbs and green onion mixture. So go ahead and drop those in from the most majestic height possible, or as close to the camera as possible, either way. Then just move this to the side because it is finally time to grab our lobster. Okay, so if you're not familiar with lobster, these bad boys retain quite a bit of liquid once cooked, so I recommend laying down some paper towels or something absorbent before you begin processing. And to begin processing, go ahead and gently lay your lobster down before twisting off the tail, making sure to thank yourself for putting down that hand towel. Next, go ahead and twist off each of the claws. Just be careful here with where you grab because this guy has a lot of pointy spines and they can kind of hurt a little. Now, as you probably know, the majority of the meat is going to be in the claws and the tail, but don't throw away the rest of the lobster because you can make an absolutely amazing stock that you can use for risottos, pastas, or a soup. From here, there are a number of ways to break down this lobster. Now here I'm taking the tail meat out by simply bending the tail outwards. You should hear a loud crunch, and this will allow you to pull out that delicate lobster meat whole, or at least mostly whole. Next, grab those massive claws and using the back of your knife and not the sharp side, I can't stress that enough, give this a solid whack in front of the first joint. Then you'll simply want to give this a twist and then flip it over and do the same to the other side. You can see despite my best efforts, I somewhat mangled the claw, but that's okay, we want big chunks anyways. But the rest of the claw comes out quite nicely and makes us feel like we're actually good at this, which is nice. Now just repeat the process for the other pieces, including the knuckle, where there is a nice hunk of meat that you don't want to miss. As you can see here, it's fairly large and it's well worth the effort. Anyways, with that done, you can just repeat this process once again for the other claw and of course for the other lobsters. Now after all your effort, what you should be left with is all this beautiful meat that you see right here. Unfortunately, we're not going to have the time to admire it for long because we need to cut this down to proper lobster roll size. So grab your lobster meat and give this a rough chop. Now for the best experience, I strongly recommend you keep the lobster chunky. Not to say that anything other than a chunky cut is bad, but well, I'll have to put you in the timeout corner. Anyways, you should have something that looks like this. Large, delicious chunks of lobster, which will break down slightly once we mix it all together. So with all our lobster broken down, it's time to add in our mayo mixture and gently fold this together. Now you'll notice that I don't put in all the mayo, and that's because I don't want the lobster to get lost in a creamy mess. You want the lobster to be the star. And as you can tell by this close-up, the lobster is certainly taking the leading role it so rightly deserves. Anyways, there's no time to stare, we've got some bread to toast. So in a skillet on medium-low heat, gently place your buns on their sides and don't get distracted because these buns burn easily and you want these to be a nice golden brown. Once you've achieved a nice golden brown, just go ahead and flip these over and let them toast up once again. This should take around 3 or 4 minutes per side depending on how good, or in this case bad, your stovetop is. With the bread perfectly toasted, we're finally ready to assemble this lobster roll. So find yourself a plate and then take your very steamy bun, taking care not to burn yourself of course, open it up, grab your lobster mixture and begin generously ladling that into your toasty vessel. If this thing isn't basically exploding with lobster meat, you're not doing it right. Then for a shot of color and some more freshness, throw down a little more of your herb mixture on top. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your lobster roll and dreams fully realized. So the only thing to do with this fully realized lobster roll is of course to taste test. And oh man, there's nothing to say here. It's as good, no, better than you can expect. A crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, buttery bun with sweet lobster meat, which is perfectly balanced with a light creaminess from the mayo. And all that richness is getting cut with that needed hit of acid coming from our lemon and freshness coming from our herbs and green onion. All this means that, rather unsurprisingly, this is going to be hard to put down. Like I said at the beginning of this video, everyone's got their favorite sandwich, but some things are just built different. And I promise this lobster roll will quickly become one of your favorites out there. And with that, our lobster roll and video are done. So thank you for staying until the end of this video. And as always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.